great honor to introduce a wonderful, devoted man making lives better in numerous ways. Keenan Lake, the executive director and founder of My Daddy Taught Me That.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of My Daddy Taught Me That. My name is Jarrett Albritton. I'll be moderating this conversation with the founder of My Daddy Taught Me That, Keenan Lake. And we're just excited about this journey. I met Keenan this year, serendipitously, while I was working for a higher education startup. Learned about his journey and felt the world needs to understand what's happening in Asheville, but also what's happening with our young Black boys and our young Black men in general, and how what we're doing in Asheville, or what he's doing in Asheville more so, can be replicated across the country, across the world. And we're going to bring in some really dope guests, from congressmen to community leaders to activists, you name it, to talk about these issues and see how can we collaborate and basically take what's happening in Asheville and replicate that across the inner cities, across America. Because at the end of the day, young men, young boys, they need us as mentors. They need resources. They need guidance. They need structure. And those are things that Keenan was blessed to have with his father, and I was blessed to have with my father. And we want to just stand in that gap for the young Black boys and Black men across the world. And then his wife has an amazing organization. My sister taught me that. So we'll be premiering that podcast as well. And she's going to have some amazing guests talking about young girls and all the great things they're doing in Asheville and all the things that that can be done across the country and across the globe. And then lastly, my favorite and what I'm most excited about, not most excited about, but I'm really excited about, is my marriage taught me that, because I've had the pleasure of seeing behind the scenes Keenan and his wife, Jackie, and how they interact and how they collaborate on changing this community, and how they also manage raising a family and also spending time with each other. And there's a lot of toxic relationship podcasts that are out there not really portraying, Black marriage and Black family in a positive way. But also I think it's important for it to be portrayed in a authentic way, so that when people deal with the adversities and they deal with, the conflict of a marriage, like how to healthily deal with it and get around it. So this episode, I think, is going to be just more of an introduction to Keenan and myself, and just having just an introductory conversation. This is literally the first episode, so I think when we look back on this a couple years from now, we'll be like, man, look where it's at and look where it's come. But the biggest thing I think in life is, like, it's all about just getting started. So and not worrying about is it perfect or whatever the case is. But I am extremely proud of the setup that you've created. So excited to get into it. So yeah, Keenan, I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself to the people that don't know who you are, and let's just have kind of a free-flowing convo.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Jarrett. So yeah, I'm Keenan Lake. I'm native of Asheville, North Carolina. Born to Benny and Robin Lake. I was raised as an only child. I do have other siblings who live in New York, but I was raised in Asheville as an only child. And so, growing up here, for those who don't know, Asheville is a predominantly white city. I think we as African Americans make up about 9% of the population. I think there's about 104,000, 105,000 people in the city of Asheville. We are the second largest city west of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so people know Asheville for the mountains, the Biltmore House, they call it the Castle on the Hill. And so if you look up Asheville, North Carolina, particularly from 2015 on, Good Morning America had dubbed Asheville, North Carolina the #1 place in the country to visit. The following year they came back, I think it was 2016. We were the #1 place in the world, in the country to visit. And so, we have been on 2019. I think the Forbes magazine had Asheville, North Carolina as the number 6 place in the world to visit. And so this is my home. Asheville's beautiful, but, I think they had us ranked right above Belize, in that Forbes magazine. And so, living in places like this, tourism attraction, a lot of stuff like that, you start to see things. And so you see a lot. But what I have done in my background, and so my dad played with the original Harlem Globetrotters, Curly Nell, Meadowlark Lemon. My story has been told for a long time now. Growing up in the home, Curly Nell, Meadowlark, all those guys visited in the home. But what he is most proud of is the work that he did. He and my mom, they both worked for the Juvenile Evaluation Center in Black Mountain, so I know it. So they worked for the state, dealing with delinquent teens and stuff like that. And so growing up, there was not a lot of trouble that I can get into, right? Not with the parents that I had. And so, but I had a great childhood, and my family's here. I grew up with a lot of my cousins, and we grew up like brothers and siblings, and my sisters with all my cousins, and my grandparents was here. My mother's from New York, so we got a chance to go to New York and visit, every summer. But basketball was a huge part of my life. And so playing in Asheville, was one of the top basketball players in the state of North Carolina when I graduated. Went on and played basketball at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. That my freshman year, we went to the Sweet 16. I transferred to NCCU, North Carolina Central University. For all the Eagles out there, go Eagles. We are the best HBCU in the country. Yeah. And so with that being said, graduated with a degree in sports medicine. Also graduated, went on and played a little pro ball overseas and explored that, tried out for several NBA teams. But God had a different plan on my life. And so once the ball stopped bouncing, while the ball was still bouncing, I needed to start transitioning. The NBA was not knocking down my door. So with a degree in sports medicine, of course, I thought I was going to be, athletic trainer, maybe going to physical therapy. Started working for a company called Mountain Neurological. That didn't last long. So then I started working for the county as a child protective service social worker. Did not want to do social work, did not want to get into social work. I saw my dad do social work in his career, and there was no money in social work. It just wasn't. And so, Jarrett, I had to pivot. And it was like, okay, you don't want to do social work, and what are you going to do? You're not playing basketball. You don't really want to, do so at the time also, Jarrett, sports medicine was oversaturated by physical therapy. So people who were, had physical therapy license and degrees, they were taking all of the jobs. You would much rather have a physical therapist than someone with sports medicine. So all those jobs at the time were oversaturated. And so started looking around and, started really looking, and they kept asking me at the county. I worked for the Buncombe County Health and Human Services. They were like, look, we need more male social workers. And I'm like, I don't really want to be a social worker. I saw that. But again, God had a different plan. And so started doing child protective service social work. And I did it for almost 20 years. And that really put me on my path to find out what I was meant to do on this planet. And it turned out to be servitude. Really serving people, but primarily youth and kids. And so I'm going to stop with that, Jarrett, and we can kind of continue the conversation. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell before my daddy taught me that.
Yeah, man. So one of the things I want to focus on this first episode is mentorship, and how important it was for you, and why you felt the creation of My Daddy Taught Me That, and creating a space for mentors to, provide guidance to young Black men that might not have it in their home or might not have the most positive examples around them. And then what I love about what you've been doing is the young boys that go through your program become the mentors, like D'Angelo and several other people that I've been able to meet. So when you first came up with the idea, how much did mentorship play a role in that, and why is it so important to you?
To be honest, Jarrett, it was kind of one of those things that you didn't really know what you had until it was kind of gone, right? And so just growing up in it, hence the word and the title, My Daddy Taught Me That. Like, growing up, with a positive male role model, and my mom is great. I don't want to be on any podcast or any talking point, news, whatever the case may be, and not talk about my mom. I had an amazing childhood, right? I grew up in a lower middle class family. My mom and dad both worked for the state. I got a chance to see parents working very hard every day and trying to, make ends meet, but they took really good care of me, right? And so, great childhood, but as a young man, I was able to really go with my dad, and my dad kept me with him, and at the time, he was mentoring me. He was showing me, like, son, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. I was able to be kind of like the fly on the wall when he was with his friends and, with his business partners and stuff like that. And so just being there at the time, it was like, oh, here we go again, this is boring. But lo and behold, I'm kind of soaking this stuff up and I'm learning and I'm seeing. And so I got a chance to see not only black men talking about positivity and talking about building their communities, but I also got a chance to see brotherhood and camaraderie and unity, and so seeing that, being around that, having a father who truly was vested in his son's well-being, I think was truly a game changer. We know all too well what's been happening, when we talk about absent parent homes, and that was one of the reasons that My Daddy Taught Me That also came to be. And so I'll kind of segue into that. And so in 2010, I lost my dad. He passed away. And so, as a tone to him, I was writing a letter for the newspaper to talk about not only what my dad meant to me, but what he meant to this community. And so we had a friend who was a friend of my dad's. My dad also wrote a book, The Greatest Heroes, he and his brothers, his best friend and brother, The Greatest Heroes of Stevens Lee. Stevens Lee was one of the black high schools in Asheville. So my dad did a lot of stuff. He had a youth program called Upfront Sports Management. So being around all this, when he passed away, I wanted to write this newspaper article. I gave it to a friend of ours who published books and did stuff. He had a publishing company. His name was Ralph Roberts. The name of his publishing company was A Books. And so I let him kind of read and proofread what I had prepared to submit to the newspaper, to put in the newspaper. And so, and I guess I'm letting my age show because, newspapers are not that prevalent anymore. We got a lot of other stuff. But anyway, so he read it and said, look, if you add about 5,000 more words, you'll have a book. Well, the light bulb went off and it was like, you know what? That could be something that could be not only great, but at the time I was probably about 8 years into my social work career. And it was like, one of the things that I could do is create a self-help book. But what I started seeing, Jarrett, while I'm being a CPS social worker, was that there were a lot of families in this area. And so when I talk about this area, I'm talking about the whole county. Buncombe County is where I'm from and what I did. And so it didn't matter where I was. I could be in the hood. I could be in the trailer park. I could be in the suburbs. I could be, in Beaver Lake or Biltmore Forest. In some of these homes, in a large percentage of these homes, I kept seeing single parents. And they were all single moms, right? And so I'm like, what's up? Like, where are all the men at? Like, you take for granted, I had a dad. It's like, well, I get it. I know that everybody doesn't have a dad. Some kids don't have a mom, but why is it that I'm in all these houses and again, the statistics and stereotypes will have you believe that this is a black and brown thing, right? That only black men are not taking care of their kids. But again, I live in a place where it's significantly white, and I'm seeing the same things. There's no parents, no fathers in these homes. And so it made me start doing research. It made me start kind of looking into things. And so the book that I wrote was titled My Daddy Taught Me That. And I wrote the book to not only talk about what my dad did for me growing up, but as a social worker, some of the things that I saw. And so, it was kind of a tone to my dad, but it was also informative, primarily for men, to like say, look, I get it. You don't necessarily have to be in the home or have to be married. We would love that, if we're following Christ and we're doing all this kind of stuff. We would love to have, people being married and families, being a traditional family, but we also know that times are not traditional like that anymore, right? And so whether you're married or not, the way that my belief is that if you bring a child into this world, you need to be responsible for that child. That child, whether again you're living in the home day to day, or you and the mother of that child are separated, divorced, or just not together at all, you still need to be prevalent in that child's life. The statistics show all too well what happens when we have single parent kids raised in this country. What happens now. This is not for all single parents, and we have a lot of cases that show kids coming from single parent homes who have done exceptionally well. But across the board, we know that that's not the norm, right? And so I wrote the book to educate and inform, again, primarily men, about being in our kids' lives, but it also gave me a platform to do what was next. And so let one of my homeboys read the book. He was like, look, man, you got some great stuff in this book. What's next? And I said, well, I could start a organization or a program to really help men. But then I started looking at my background. I was like, I get it. I could help men, but we know that men are already, set in their ways, or they have already done this. Why not start grabbing some of these young folks before they get into, a situation? And so I had a passion for kids. I've been working with kids my whole life. And so my dad, in 2012, we started My Daddy Taught Me That, our mentoring program.
Gotcha, man. So just talking on a high level in terms of like the importance of mentorship, etc. In your opinion, for young Black boys, and the things that they deal with specifically, especially in current times, what age do you think is that crucial point that you need to get to them, and why, from your perspective?
Well, I mean, not only studies show, but the earlier you can get to any youth, the better. The earlier the better. And so we always talk about, catching them as early as we can. When I started my program was, and even our flagship program today, was geared towards middle and high school kids. 12 through 19 was the age that I started at. And the reason being was because, for me, programming was something that, came natural and easy to me, again, dealing with my dad and watching him run basketball clinics and programs, throughout my life. And also I was better able to relate, to young men that age. And so I started my flagship program. My daddy taught me that with that age group, 12 to 19, grade 6 through 12. Really being able to not only mentor, mentoring is a key piece, but mentoring, being able to, not only help academically, but making sure that tutors are in place, really focusing on education. There was a component of confidence building, making sure that our young men not only had haircuts and looked the part, but we know when we get a haircut, we feel better. Particularly as us as Black men, we get our haircut, we think that we're ready to do anything we possibly can to take on the world. And so dressing nice, doing all the things to help your confidence, but being able to provide resources, being able to provide opportunities, allowing our kids to be able to travel outside of their surroundings and their environments. A lot of kids, who came to this program, who come to this program, live in communities where they're one way in, one way out. And so, not being able to be exposed to certain things. So no, let's go to Selma, Alabama, where we can walk across Edmunds Pettus Bridge and, shoulder to shoulder with Jesse Jackson and Hillary Clinton 10 feet, her and Cory Booker 10 feet in front of us. Let's go to again, Selma, where we can talk and see, the exonerated 5 from New York, and Corey Wise comes back to Asheville, North Carolina with us. Let's start teaching our kids about their history. Let's start teaching our kids, not only what that they can obtain locally, but what they can attain on a national level. Let's start putting them in places where they could be around people that they never thought they could be around and see, but the people that they see on TV, these people can be obtainable to you, and you can aspire to be that and better. And so really creating a platform for our youth, creating a curriculum that they can thrive in and grow has been, my passion and my work. but this organization has really grown to really change lives. And like you said, now, we have had, My Daddy Taught Me That, where we have received national recognition, state recognition for our gang prevention program. We started, in 2016, we started the girls version of that. My sister taught me that. We have an ambassador program that you mentioned earlier for our young men who've been in the program 5 years. Now, like you said, it's not my job to get the elementary school kids. You've been in this program 5 years. You know the validity of this program. It's time for you to start pulling some of these younger kids up and teaching them and training them. Also, we have a job training component. Not only can we get kids jobs, Chick-fil-A, pizza, whatever the case may be, but we have a curriculum where they can shadow. So we have 25 tracks: car detailing, construction, electrical, computer coding, photography, you name it. We have 25 different tracks, so we can plug kids in to do and learn these skills and trades where we pay them $15 an hour to do this work. And so really being intentional about giving the youth who come to this program every opportunity to not only grow, but to understand the world, understand this country, but then to build a camaraderie, a brotherhood, a sisterhood, and then ultimately give them the tools and the keys to be successful.
Yeah, man. No, I heard a lot of great things when you talked about that. What I heard really was, first off, it's about making sure their core is filled with confidence, self-worth, belief, and that comes from actual actions of getting the haircut, dressing the part, and also being around like-minded kids, but also like-minded adults, or not necessarily even like-minded, but you are the average of who you hang around.
Absolutely.
In some ways I don't like that phrase because it makes people kind of calculate are you bringing me down or up? But at the end of the day, I always like to be the dumbest in the room and a topic or the least fit in the room, because that's going to force me to, really level up. But it's also going to help me believe that I can, have a six pack. I can, run a business because I got business owners around me that have that mindset that's always, feeding back into me. So, I think me and you clicked because, my platform, Big Tech Energy, is not just about, talking about how we can help people, but it's how can we get people jobs? How can we give people training? How can we give people skills that gives them the confidence to not just eat the fish, but fish for themselves?
Absolutely.
And so the fact that you have 25 tracks, the fact that you're taking them out of what they know and putting them in environments that can inspire them and say, hey, there's more out there than, my hometown, but there's New York City, there's Selma, there's history, there's Black men that are actually going out there and getting it. I think that's why me and you clicked, and I was just like, okay, whatever I can do to support this message and help amplify it, that's what I want to do. And I understand the power of podcasting is being able to be inside of everybody's home.
Right.
And if we can have Black men at whatever level, middle school, high school, college, or even older Black men be inspired by hey, I want to do what Keenan's doing for my community, even if it starts small. I think that's super important and impactful. In terms of where you think is the biggest threat to young Black boys that motivates you to be so solution oriented, what is the biggest, feel is the biggest threat or challenge for young Black boys? And if it's not addressed, then they're gonna, be in a tough situation.
Yeah, I think, Jarrett, you made some valid points, man. I mean, to answer your question, a couple things. One, I think the biggest threat to young Black boys is us, is young Black boys, meaning, of course now the name is the YNs, right? But not knowing, not having the knowledge and the information to know, not being able to have people push them to give them drive. Let me make this clear, we're 13 years in, my organization, we're 13 years in. When we first started, our first 6 years, we were meeting our youth where they were. So this program was based in public housing, in quote unquote, the hood, right? And so for 6 years we were based in, until, one day we came out and we were in the middle of a gunfight, so it was these kids know this environment all too well. let's start getting them out of this environment and showing them and introducing them to other things. And so a part of our program had always been taking them to Carolina Panther football games, traveling to see different places and different people and learning about culture and history. But the one thing that I found is that if you're not able to teach, you said the key word, teaching them how to fish. Like, I can talk all day about what's right and what's wrong and how to do something, but the reality is these kids got to go back home. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's facts. Like Mr. Lake, Keaton with Lake, the kids call me Lake. This is great. This is cool, and I feel comfortable here. We have provided a safe place to talk and not only teach, but to really hear where they're coming from, right? To hear what they're dealing with, to really try to get an understanding of this is what's happening so we can help address that too, right? But the reality is, we could talk all day, but if you're not helping out or providing a system, a resource, or opportunity, then it's really futile. And so what I tell folks is I'm really trying to, in lack of better terms, I'm really trying to turn goons into businessmen, and not only businessmen, but successful family men. And so, one day you're going to lead a household. One day you're going to have a wife or a girlfriend or somebody, and your kids are going to look to you, and it's like, we all know, Jarrett, as men and women, not just as just not a man thing, but as an adult, but particularly as men, if we're talking about leading households, you're going to have those moments when it's like, man, I got to figure this out. And mommy and daddy and whoever else is not coming to save you. And so this world is going to push you, and it's going to so-called hit you. And, how do you hit back? How do you withstand that hit that's going to, either push you to fail or push you to succeed? And so, tough skin, thick skin, being able to endure. We know what's happening with this country right now. We know what's going on. And so the biggest threat that I think to Black men, we could talk about racism. We could talk about, equity and being able to have all those things that are not readily accessible to people who look like us, right? We all know those things all too well. My biggest push is, what are we going to do? And how are we going to help us? How are we going to be able to say, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter what kind of turmoil the country's in. We are strong enough, like our ancestors did, to stand on our own too.
Yeah.
And so, again, our biggest threat to young Black men today, I feel, is us. And the key is being empowered, being educated, and having the wherewithal to not be lazy. I'm going to end with this. I tell my kids all the time, it doesn't matter what you do in this world, you're going to work. You're going to work. That's just the bottom line. If you're on the block and you got a package, you're working. If you have to work harder in school to get a degree or whatever the case may be, you're working. Hell, if you get a sign that, the folks who have the signs on the corner, the so-called will work for food signs, they're still working. Nobody want to be in the sun all day with a sign. So it's just a matter of what kind of work and what kind of effort you're going to put in to get the quality of life that you're looking for. And so nothing's going to be given to you. You're going to have to work for it. And so those are the things that I instill in our youth and our kids. That's some of the basis of our program, really being able to, again, inform, educate, providing resources and opportunities. So when a young woman or a young man leaves this organization, they won't be able to say that they didn't know or they didn't get an opportunity to excel, succeed, and grow.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. One of my favorite phrases that kind of motivates how I spend my time is, show me your calendar and how you spend your day, and I'll show you where you'll be in 6 to 12 months, where you'll be in 5 years, where you'll be in 10 years. And so what you're doing is you're filling up their calendar with, mindset. You're filling up their calendar with exposure to new ideas and new environments. You're filling up their calendar with learning about how to be an electrician, how to do HVAC, how to do computer coding, because those type of things will give you the confidence to make a living. And if you don't have the access or the resources early, you are in such a competitive disadvantage.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have the education as well as the parents that I did. And so that's why I've never been super arrogant about, well, why can't they do what I'm doing, or
Right.
whatever. Like, no, some people have certain privileges and some people have certain challenges, and the fact that you are decreasing the challenges and increasing the access, I think is such a great thing. And that's why I want everybody to know about who you are, and I want you to be replicated across all the states and eventually different countries. So this is part one of the mentorship conversation, and just a brief intro into like, who is Keenan, what is my daddy taught me that. But ultimately it's about mindset, it's about character, it's about access to skills that can make you money, and then having a mindset of hard work. Because, like you said, nobody's going to give it to you. Being a black man can be extremely lonely because ain't nobody here to save us.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear our excuses. Nobody wants to hear our plight. They're just like, are you going to make it happen or not? Because if you don't, I got to find the man that can.
Right.
And nobody's really, giving a handout. So I think it is smart that you're going after, black boys in the middle school phase, going into high school, because that was my thing too. It's like, if I can get to a young black man, yet black boy in middle school before they get to high school, and their grades will impact their ability to go to college, their ability to just really be successful, then they have a chance.
Absolutely. Also, you want to catch them, again, the earlier you can get them, the better.
Yeah.
But you want to catch them before they start making the mistakes that ultimately change your life.
Yeah.
Like, we know that our kids can get in trouble. You can get in trouble in school and not even have access to even go to college or have a higher education chance to get a higher education. So, my mindset was always, let's try to catch them before they make those mistakes, and while they're still, moldable, while you still can, influence and show. And at that age, for me, I was able to teach and show, and they were, to me, again, with my expertise in my field, I was better able to work with the middle schoolers and the teenagers more so than the fourth and fifth graders. I can show you things that are more not only valuable to you, but you understand more because you're just older, So that was for me. But again, I firmly believe that the younger we can catch them, the younger that we can instill positivity into our youth and instill these things, again, a work ethic, a drive, provide opportunities, provide outlets. Too much time too much idle time is the devil's playground. So really being able to give our kids something tangible for them to grasp, for them to hold on to. People have told me throughout my career, if you just save one, and early in my career, even to this day, I'm still guilty of this. I don't want to save one, I want to save them all. I know that's not possible. Just with the work that I've done in this role over even if it's just the last 13 years. But what I can say, you mentioned D'Angelo. We have Trey McGahee. We have Andrew Skinner. I can name at least 100 young men who have come through this program who are extremely successful and who are better for being a part of this program. But at the same time, I can name about that many who are not, and so it's also up to the young men and the young folks who want to come, take advantage of, any programming that you have in your communities or, positive opportunities that come your way, because they're not always going to be there and they're not always going to be given freely. We run a free program. Everything about this program is free. We provide food. We have a clothing line for our kids to have, shirts and sweatsuits and all the things. Again, we feed our kids every program. We take trips. A year or so ago, we took 25 teenagers to New York City. We won't be doing that trip again. That was a rough trip. We were in New York for about 3 days. That was tough. But outside of New York, we've been to Selma. We've been, of course, we go to Georgia all the time. we took 100 kids to Missouri several years ago, and so the Kids Across America camp. And so being able to expose these young folks to the possibilities, if they can see it, they can achieve it. And so really being able to provide this for them has been my life's work, has been a true honor, Jarrett. And I look forward to, more discussions about how we can not only help our Black and brown kids, but how we can help our youth in general. I am a Black man, and so I understand the plight of what we have to deal with. But there are a lot of kids, Black, white, it doesn't matter what color you are. And this is our motto, on our vans, we have a couple of 15 passenger vans. It says, from our Father's hands, will shape tomorrow's man. And so I'm not a pastor, I'm not a Bible thumper, but I do believe that there is a Lord and Savior out there, and that He has a plan for us all. But again, I also believe that everybody, Black, white, green, purple, whatever color you are, if you're willing to learn and you're willing to be taught and grow, then this is the place for you.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is part one of the mentorship conversation. We're going to definitely dive into this a lot deeper. But for folks that want to support your initiative and, basically in whatever way aid in your mission, what are some ways for people to contact you, and what are some ways for them to support?
Absolutely. So, the website, we have a website. The actual name of our organization is KL Training Solutions, but we're known for our flagship program as My Daddy Taught Me That. So you can go to klts.org. That's one of our websites. You can also go to mydaddytaughtmethat.org, all spelled out. That's another website. We're on Instagram. My Daddy Taught Me That on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. You can contact me directly. My email is Keenan, KEYNON, at mydaddytaughtmethat.org, or you can call me. My phone number is area code 828-582-2261. So feel free to reach out. In any way I can support and help anybody. If you're starting an organization in your neck of the woods, or there's something that I can support and help you with, I'm also do that as well. So I think that, if we can be a united front for our kids and show up together, it'll be all for the better.
Awesome, man. And what are some of the, 2026 goals and things you're excited about moving forward, just to give people an idea of maybe how they can be a part of that vision?
Well, one of the things that we've been trying to do, we've been grateful to bless the community of Asheville in the county of Buncombe, which is western North Carolina, for the last 13 years. One of the things that we're looking to do is expand. And so we have opportunities to spread our program throughout the state. And so that's one of the things we're going to be looking to do in 2026, is start expanding and growing more throughout the state. But also, we are still growing and building here right at home. We obtained a building a few years ago, so we're having to build the building out. We're looking to have a commercial kitchen and a cafeteria for the kids, and a couple of more classrooms. Just looking to continue to grow, continue to expand, to do what we do and help and shape more youth. That's the mindset.
Yep. So, if you're a community leader, a politician, government official, philanthropist, definitely make sure you tap in with Keenan on all the places he mentioned, mydaddytaughtmethat.org. And we'd just love to see how we can collaborate, how we can add value to your community, and vice versa, and how we can make this mission amplified across the nation and really provide that mindset, resources, confidence, and skills to young Black boys across the country while they still are impressionable and able to receive that guidance. So with that being said, thank you to everybody that's watched this podcast. Please share it, like it, comment, and just let people know, subscribe, and just let people know about this podcast, let people know about My Daddy Taught Me That, KL Training Solutions, And until next time, this is the My Daddy Taught Me That podcast. First episode of the bag. We are out.
Man, God is his word, my daddy taught me that. Respect ain't given, is earned, my daddy taught me that. Always look a man in his eyes, my daddy taught me that. My daddy taught me that. My daddy taught me that. Never on your knees, you stand, my daddy taught me that. You live and you